What's up YouTube? I'm Mike, and today the content is literally writing itself for me. I made a video very recently titled Trend Rant. Trenbolone is the forbidden fruit. In that video, what I primarily talked about was my experiences with how women seem to tell men they want one thing and then actually want the direct opposite. I gave the example of how girls will complain about guys that don't return their calls or ignore their text messages, but if you happen to be the guy that calls her every time you're supposed to, then that casts you in a negative light where you're considered, like a simp or somebody who's sweating on her. So one of the big complaints that women that I have seen published in studies, honestly, I have to be very transparent. This does not describe my wife at all, but I have been with women in the past, and over the last 20 or so years, there seems to be a huge complaint amongst married women about the unfairness of the workload. And so I found an article on Your Tango. It actually just popped up in my news feed today that says, is housework really the main issue of marital discontent? This little article that I'm going to read you goes a long way to backing up every single point that I made in that video titled Trenbolone is the Forbidden Fruit. I'm going to link the article for you so that you can see what I'm reading from, but I'm not going to put it on the screen because I don't want to give the results away basically prematurely. So this article is written by a woman named Samantha Rodman Witten, and she says, I began working in private practice with adults and couples in 2009. Over the decade plus that I've been in practice, there have been many cultural shifts. One major change that I observed is that millennial men do far more housework and childcare than men in prior years. Still, it says, they do far more housework and childcare than men in prior years. Currently, I have very few male clients under the age of 40 who don't do half of the childcare and housework on weekends. During weekdays, their share is moderated only by how many hours they are in the house, and if they work longer hours than their wives, they often also get up earlier with the kids to compensate. So again, let me be transparent. I am not talking about my marriage. I have been out of work for almost 2 years. The lion's share of the money that we have been living on came from my retirement account, but not all of it. We spent an entire year living purely on the money that came from my wife's retirement account. I do not lift a finger to do a single solitary chore in this house. I may have cleaned the toilet that I make a mess of 2, maybe 3 times maximum, probably in the last year. I make some effort at picking up things, but I'm talking minuscule. To say that my wife does 99.99999% of all of the housework, that's what she does. And she has never, ever complained to me about this. I mean, she's probably said, it would be nice, if you would help out a little bit more, it'd be nice if you, did a dish or fucking wiped your own ass every once in a while. So this is definitively not my wife, which is probably why our marriage has worked out very differently. This has not been my experience with my previous girlfriends, and it seems to be a major point of contention in a lot of marriages. This woman, who apparently is a couples therapist or counselor, what she's reporting here is, I can't even believe what I'm reading. The amount of work that men under 40 are apparently putting in to housework and child rearing is totally fucking foreign to me. Nevertheless, it says, unlike when I started in practice or even 5 to 7 years ago, I rarely speak to a man who considers childcare to be watching the kids for his wife. Now, I do agree. I don't think I would ever have said that I was babysitting my own kids. I hope I've never said that. Also, the COVID pandemic and skyrocketing telecommuting rates have allowed me to gain insight into how couples function with when both partners work from home. Men, especially under 40s, are interrupted during telehealth sessions by their kids as often as women are. I see and hear about men doing lots of chores during their work from home time now. This is in contrast to prior years when wives would complain that on the days their husband did work from home, they didn't throw in a load of laundry or anything else to help out. My wife and I are definitely old school. In my previous job, I was home, at least half the time. At least. Bare minimum, half of what would be considered working hours, I was at home. Arguably, probably 75%. During the time that I was at home, I was working on my computer or taking phone calls. There would have been nothing during my workday that would have precluded me from throwing in a load of laundry, washing a dish, unloading a fucking dishwasher in between, phone calls or emails. Nothing would have prevented that. It was never, ever expected of me. And so, again, in the comments, please let me know if these men are represented. I'm guessing that these men are not representative of members of my audience. I would be very shocked to find out that they are. I think that what we're reading about here is what is predominantly taking place on the liberal left with these, beta men who are being convinced by their wives that in order to be good husbands and fathers, they need to have a full-time job and help out with the house chores and take care of the kids and do all the emotional heavy lifting. This is definitively what we hear coming from women on the left. These supposedly modernized, feminist type of women who want all of this equality in their relationships, and women at large have definitively been complaining about the unfair workload for decades. Yet, what this person found is, yet women in my virtual office, both when they are speaking to me alone and with their husbands present, seem no happier than a decade ago. Their complaints have shifted from unfair distribution of housework and childcare responsibilities to unfair distribution of emotional labor or some other arbiter of perceived inequality. To me, this indicates that wives' issues with their husbands can rarely be fixed by them doing more housework, and certainly that just doing more with the home and kids does not inoculate a marriage against distress. Many men have figured this out already. So I read this to my wife earlier. Admittedly, we are not getting along today, so I did not get what I think is a fair representation of her feelings, although I will share with you to some degree what she said, which is that she felt like the single most important thing to a woman was emotional support, and that if a man is otherwise doing all of this beta type ass behavior, but he's not supporting her emotionally, then she's not going to be happy in her marriage. Now understand, this is my conservative wife. I countered her point by saying, what do you think the odds are that this man who has listened to his wife's needs so much so that he's doing half of the housework and childcare on his day off and some portion of it on his weekday evenings? It seems unlikely that this guy's not meeting her emotional needs. What I think, of course, is happening is that the type of man who is willing to do all of this extra work on top of being a provider is a fucking beta bitch. And that's why these women continue to be unhappy. A woman in so many ways is like a child. She will ask for more and more and more and more and more and more and more until you put your foot down. Children will always test their limits. They will always try to get the maximum they can out of you. That's what separates alpha men from beta men. Alpha men know when to put their fucking foot down and say enough is enough. There are lines in the sand that will not be crossed. There are established boundaries in this relationship of what role you play and what role I play. And it seems, just like in the video that I made before, where the woman will say that she wants this soft, caring, sweet guy who's available and takes all the calls, there's a limit to this. You cannot cede your manhood to a woman, even if she's trying to take it from you. At the end of the day, what she wants at some level or another is a man who will stand up to her and put her in her place. When you put a woman in her place, you make her feel like a woman. She does not want to do all the heavy lifting. She does not want to carry all of the responsibility. She does not want to shoulder all of the burden. And they're not always good at expressing that. And what we see time and time again, this is now backed up by not exactly research, but it's at least clinical evidence to show that what a woman will tell you is the problem in the marriage is almost certainly not the problem. She may have said this along with other things, but like I said, I really highly doubt that these men who were doing all of this extra heavy lifting were emotionally unavailable. I really doubt that was the case. What I think is very unlikely and why women very rarely get their needs met in a marriage is because it's easy for a woman to go into a counseling or therapy setting and say, I'm really unhappy in my marriage. I'm really unfulfilled in my marriage. And the therapist says, well, why? Tell me what's going on. It's easier for a woman to say, I feel like there's an unfair distribution of the work, or now she's claiming an unfair distribution of emotional labor. It's a lot easier for a woman to straw man that as the cause of her misery than to say to the therapist, I don't feel like I'm married to a man. My husband doesn't put me in my place. My husband doesn't take control when I want him to. He's not assertive the way I want him to be. A woman is probably not likely going to admit that in the confines of her marriage. She can't admit it. The second that a woman says out loud, I'm in the marriage with a man who's not really a man, she's gone. She's gone. And so she's pointing the finger at everything but the actual problem, because it's a lot harder to just say, oh my God, I married a beta bitch cuck and that's why I'm unhappy. She's not going to tell her therapist that. And so what we see time and time again in not just this circumstance, but in a lot of different things that women choose to complain about, it seems to be that they're complaining about the wrong things. They're saying they want the wrong things because it's very hard to admit what they really want. And I sympathize. I really do. Like, how is a woman even supposed to say that without risking some level of, you give a guy a license to be a dickhead, and the child in him is going to come out and he's going to start pushing his fucking boundaries and limits. And that's what makes relationships so fucking challenging, is that there's this constant balancing act that has to be maintained. It's like walking a fucking tightrope, and each party wants to trespass into the other party's fucking role. Each party wants to take more control than they should have or cede more responsibility than they should. And at the end of the day, we are animals. Male and female, we are animals, and instinctually and in our limbic systems, we are very different creatures. Our bodies are pretty good at admitting what we want. Our brains and our mouths are not. And that's one of the things that's very hard for men to express. Men are very, very poor at expressing when they feel weak and insecure and in need of validation or in need of confirmation. Because we're supposed to be the rock. We're supposed to be the impenetrable force. We're supposed to be, the unbreakable, the unsinkable ship. And so when a man gets locked into his masculinity, it can be very hard for him to be vulnerable to his wife, and that causes him to take out a lot of his shit on her. And when she's not owning up to her desire for him to be a leader and the man and the dominant figure in the fucking marriage, and when she starts getting saddled with too much responsibility, then she becomes unhappy and starts projecting that onto him. And so I think the reason that people can spend 20, 30 years in counseling, my wife and I spent a lot of time in therapy going round and round in circles, because I think we were working on all of the wrong fucking problems. And it took our therapist saying, you know what, you guys need to get divorced. Like, he literally said, y'all are fucked. Like, y'all are never gonna make it. Y'all need to get divorced. And it was only then when we were like, wait a minute. You can't tell us that we're gonna get, you can't tell us this is not gonna work. You know, fuck you. We're gonna just prove you wrong. And to some degree, I think my wife and I, one of the things that has held us together for so long, and one of the things that makes us so fucking stubborn, is that we got together in the worst of all possible scenarios. You know, she didn't have, I mean, it was technically an affair. It wasn't a sexual affair, but I mean, she was married when I met her. I was chasing my best friend's wife. Like, we did every single thing you could do, just about, minus actual physical infidelity. We did it all wrong. So our marriage was supposed to fail immediately. Nobody believed in us. Her entire family abandoned her because of our marriage. And so when basically everybody counts you out, it's almost like you have a fucking mandate to prove them all wrong. And so I think that there's been times in this marriage where that was the thing that carried the fucking day. It was just almost like, we can't let these fuckers be right. So we got to figure out how to make this work. And we've had a tremendous amount of growth in the process. But that doesn't mean it's going to work forever. You know, I was going to make a very different video today. I was going to make a video titled, you know, is marriage even, like, is long-term commitment possible? Because sometimes it just gets to the point where it just feels like you are literally banging your head against the wall. Like, you could not possibly be coming at life from more uncommon directions. Nobody can be honest with one another about how they really feel, because in the on the battleground of the bedroom, for her to tell me what she really needs and for me to tell her what I really need, it creates an irreversible vulnerability that neither of us is willing to fucking to accept when we both have swords in our hands. And that's the thing. When you're in the midst of a fight, when you're in the midst of discord, when you're not communicating, you just got to get away, because you're never going to be able to say or do the right thing, because you're in defense mode. And as long as you're in defense mode, there's just zero hope of ever getting through to one another. So here's just another example of where you've got to be careful with all the fucking bullshit that people will tell you about what it takes to make a marriage work. You know, what the right things and the wrong things. Everybody's got an opinion on how much work he should be doing. Her friends are always talking in her ear. You know, he's not doing enough to help you around the house. And his buddies are always in his ear, like, she's not giving you enough sex. You know, come out with us and, you know, run around, chase pussy. There's always somebody in your ear telling you all the things you want to hear, which makes it easy to fucking quit. Nobody's telling you, bullshit, go suck it up and make that work. So there you have it. More evidence that you have to dig deeper and get beyond all of the surface level bullshit to really find out who your significant other is, who your spouse is, who women are. We do terrible jobs at presenting our true selves. That's one of the things I've tried to do almost to a fault on this channel. One of the reasons that I seem, and am, but, you know, seem so fucking insane is because I don't hold anything back. I'm no more fucked up than anybody else out there. I know all of you people in my audience are just as fucked up as I am. I'm just crazy enough to fucking share every single fucking solitary gory detail, because to me it's therapeutic. So I can feel myself rambling on this. I can tell that the weight of my relationship problems are bearing on this video, so I should probably cut it short. But I just thought this article was very interesting, and it went a long way to reinforcing the points that I made in my previous video. So I thought I would share it with you. As I said, it will be linked in the description. She goes on to have some like thought experiments. I didn't read the thought experiments because they're just her opinions. They're not based in the actual clinical research, if you could call it research, not based on anything from the actual clinical setting. But it seems pretty clear. Like, I could err on the side of being a dickhead and just be like, see, here you go. There's more evidence that it's impossible to make women happy. And I just really don't think that that's true. I don't think women are uniquely impossible to be pleased. I think that it really just is a case of where the constraints that society has put on women has made it impossible for them to be who they truly are. And so then this feminist movement tries to compensate and it just gets everything fucking wrong. Like, you don't need to separate from the opposite sex to be more of the sex you are. And that's what feminism seems to be all about. It seems to be just driving a wedge between men and women rather than bringing men and women closer by admitting what a woman really is, what her internal motivations truly are, women coming to grips with what they actually want in life. The few women that I've talked to who watched the video that I made, talking about how they want all of the things they say they don't, so far 100% of women have been like, damn, like, I hate to admit it, but he's kind of right. Like, every woman I've spoke to said she disagreed with my blanket statements. Like, 100% of women this, 100% of women that. But that more or less, the woman is not attracted to a beta man. She wants an alpha in her life who will put her in her place in a loving and respectful way. So, as always, thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.